Hey, Samiki, it's that time of year again. Saturnalia is coming. Do you know how you'll celebrate it in your classroom this year? In this video, I'll show you exactly how I introduce this Roman holiday to my students and how we build up to our big end of the week mock celebration, which even includes an educational animal sacrifice. So if you're looking for fresh Saturnalia ideas, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. All right. Because I'm a teacher, I'm going to organize this the way that I would organize a lesson. So I'm going to start with my goals. Um, Part of this is just because I think that that's a good, reasonable place to start, but also because I'm always aware whenever I'm sharing things for my classroom or from my classroom that I'm sharing it with people who have a completely different context than I do. We all teach different students in different places with different constraints and limitations and things like that. I think it's really useful and beneficial to give you the complete context before I get into the actual lessons and materials. All right, I have three main goals with my Saturnalia kind of like mini unit. And that is that first, it does need to be educational. Um, Duh. But really, I want them to understand what them being my students, I want them to understand what Saturnalia is. And I want them to understand what they're doing when we're doing our mock celebration. I want them to, have something to take away from this week. And I think also, the powers that be at my school would prefer this as well. They don't want to see holiday parties that it's just eating and chaos. And honestly, I don't want to be the one that's in charge of a holiday party that's just eating and chaos. So there's got to be some educational aspect to it. Um, it has to be easy, easy for the kids, but also easy for me. Um, Sometimes these kinds of things end up becoming more work than they're really worth. And I think at the beginning, when I was first trying to put this together, it was a lot of work, kind of gathering and creating the materials. But now that I have everything, it's very easy to execute, and I try to keep it that way. Also inexpensive. And it does have to be fun. Although I want it to be education heavy, I want there to be some, learning takeaways and objectives. I want it to be fun for everybody involved, including me. Um, all right, so now a little bit about my context. I have 80-minute blocks at my school, which um, was intimidating when I first started teaching there, but now it's actually great, and I don't know what I would do with less time. And it's perfect for, doing a mock cultural activity like a Saturnalia celebration. So I've got plenty of time to work with. I have a huge class. So I do this every year with my Latin 1 10th grade class. Um, I usually have two sections of Latin 1, one in the fall, one in the spring. I don't do it with my spring kids because I don't have them during Saturnalia. We do something else. Yeah, it, this is designed for there to be a lot of students in the classroom because I need to have something that works with that amount of kids. Um, and the students have already learned about some things too. So they've already learned about the Roman family and the Roman institution of slavery. And they've also already learned about Roman religion, mythology, the pantheon of gods, um, and also sacrifices. Um, all of that background knowledge kind of applies when they're learning about Saturnalia because they already have a context in which they can understand sort of some aspects of this holiday. So this is the structure, the rough structure of the week. I do this in the days leading up to Christmas vacation. And so one issue is that the number of days before vacation varies. Sometimes we have, just a couple days at the beginning of the week. Sometimes we have 4 days. Sometimes we have an entire 5-day week. Um, When we have an entire 5-day week, like we had last year, like we're going to have this year, I make this take up 4 days because usually the last day of school, there's all kinds of field trips and kids are missing class for this and that and the other thing. And I really want to do this on a day when all of the students are going to be there. So we prepare for it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we do the celebration Thursday, and then Friday, I put on a documentary or something like that for the few students who are there. All right. The first and last day of this mini unit is always the same. Not they're not the same day, but I mean, I do the first day the same way every time and the last day the same way every time, no matter how many days are in the middle. So the first day is always front loading information about Saturnalia. And the last day is the mock Saturnalia. And then the middle days is additional learning, depending on how many days I have, and then prep for the actual mock celebration. Um, so throughout the week, students learn about Saturnalia. Um, they prep for the celebration in 4 groups. So I divide the entire class into 4 groups. One of them is the decorations group. So they have to kind of do their own little research on the internet about how the Romans might have decorated for Saturnalia, and other details about Saturnalia that might help them come up with good decorations. I have another group that is in charge of figuring out how we're going to relax our social norms on the day of the celebration. So, as you know, during Saturnalia, kind of social roles were reversed or relaxed, right? They were going back to the golden age when Saturn reigned and there was no need for, laws and social structures and everybody was just happy. And then the way that, that was reflected in Rome was people's servants dined before them and things like that. So they have to think about ways that we can also relax the social norms in our classroom. I have one group that's dedicated to games because one portion of the celebration is just playing. They learn that gambling was allowed during Saturnalia. Gambling is not allowed in my classroom, but they can come up with some games that might be kind of, could somehow be sort of like that. Just fun games for them to play. And then I have my animal sacrifice group, which executes, no pun intended, the animal sacrifice during the mock celebration. That kind of opens the entire thing. Okay, so I'm going to run down the materials now real quick, just so you know kind of what's involved in all of this. Um, yeah, I wasn't sure if I should display this before or after I talk about the order of events, but I think it makes sense to go before, and you can always go back if you need to look at it again. So I try to make as few copies as possible this week. Again, I'm trying to make this easy on me, as well as fun and educational for the students. So um, the only hard copies that I have to make are the Agite Nunc, the Do Now, which is an intro to the entire thing. The Saturnalia notes that they take, I give them like fill in the blank notes. I outline all the info I want them to know, and then they fill in the blanks. So I have photocopies of that. Um, if I have time, depending on how many days I have an additional reading about the Cronia festival, which helps the students to kind of review what they learned about Saturnalia in their notes by kind of reading about the Cronia and then comparing and contrasting the two. Um, for digital, I have a lot of digital materials for this so that I don't have to print it. Way back when, I had a wonderful colleague, Erin, at my school, and she made this really cool slide deck about Saturn that was in Latin. And so I still use that. And so my students will read that because they should be doing some Latin during the week, not just, doing a whole bunch of stuff in English. So they read this story in Latin and then they do a reading comprehension Google form to assess that they comprehended what they read. And then at the very end of the week, they also do a reflection Google form. So they reflect on what they learned. Um, and, what they thought of the whole thing. They give me feedback and all of that stuff. So those are my digital learning resources. The celebration also requires some copies. I have instructions for each of the four groups. I have a script for the animal sacrifice, which I unfortunately cannot share because even though I have, edited it and rewritten it to make it form what I want it to be, I don't remember where I got the original script from. Like the words that the sacerdotes say, why did I say it weird like that? That sacerdotes say, I don't know where they came from. I can't remember. I got it from somewhere on the internet, like, God, 7 years ago, maybe. I don't know. It was before COVID, I'll tell you that. And I have yet to be able to find the original source. So um, I will either find that source and be able to like repost about it at some point, or I'll just write an entirely original script at some point and make that available in case people want it. And then Sigularia. So the Romans, right? They exchanged like little clay figurines and like little wax candles and things like that. And when I was thinking of how to replicate this in my classroom, I'm like, okay, I'm not buying junk for the students to exchange every year. That's too much. It's too much money, and it like why? No. So instead, what I came up with was I made little greeting cards. I'll show you in a minute what they look like, just in like a Google Doc, and they have little kind of like gingerbread shaped figurines on it, and the students decorate them, and then they exchange them. And so that's what we do for Sigularia. And I'll explain again more about that process in a minute. Then we need materials for decorations. It's just construction paper. That's it. Green and yellow construction paper, tape, glue, staples, etc. I have other colors out there too in case they want it for other things, but usually that's what they use the most of. I did purchase Pilei, which I'm wearing one right now, right? Because sometimes they wore like the freedman's cap on Saturnalia, and so I was able to buy like a classroom set of these. I don't think it's called a classroom set. I'm just calling it that because there was like 30, and they're multicolored, and they're just these cheap felt hats, and I got them on Amazon, and I just reuse them every year. Kids don't have to wear them, but a lot of them do. And I put it out there for them in case they want them. Games, I just have games in my classroom. I'm sure a lot of teachers do. Uno is a big one. Uno is usually what we end up doing. It works fine in the place of a gambling game or something like that. Um, and then lastly, the sacrifice requires some material. So first, costumes. I did not buy these or make these. Luckily, I'm married to a Latin teacher who inherited costumes from his previous Latin teacher at his school. And so I just used those. And they're nothing fancy. It's like, sheets with like holes cut in them and then like little belts that they tie around. And then the the priests wear like they take another sheet and put it over their head because their head's supposed to be covered. Um, I did purchase a giant package of kazoos, which will hopefully last me for many years. I only give out a few every year because they need to process in to music. They process in and out to music. So I give out a couple of kazoos, and that's what they use for the music. Um, Added bonus, if you hand out kazoos to your students the week before Christmas vacation, your colleagues will just absolutely love you. Just nothing but loving stares in the break room every time you walk in. I have paper plates for offerings. They're labeled with the with the entrails that go on them so that the students know what they're looking for. This will make more sense in a little bit. Grape juice and crackers because they have to, consecrate the victim. So I have grape juice for the wine that they sprinkle on it. And then I just break up some crackers and that's the mola salsa. You do need some kind of fake pointy thing. I don't know, different schools are comfortable with different things. You might just use like a giant yardstick to conduct the sacrifice with. I don't even know where I got this from. I might, I might have had like a gladiator costume or something that this came with. This might also be something I kind of stole from my husband. I don't remember. But this is what we use. Um, and then a teacher's desk for an altar. I actually have a podium, which works really well, and I have a black tablecloth that I put over it. And you'll also need a victim. And I'm gonna I'm gonna tell you what I use for that at the end of the video. I think, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I think I'm a genius because of what I came up with for the victim. Just wait, just wait. My students think so too. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk through each of the days real quick. So day one, like I said, is the front loading. So we start with the Agitenunk, which is just an intro to holidays. I just ask them open-ended questions about holidays, just to kind of get them thinking about holidays in general. Why do we celebrate them? What are your favorite holidays? What makes a holiday a holiday? Do you think everybody in the entire world celebrates holidays? Things like that. Um, then I give them a little introduction to the week, tell them everything that we'll be doing, how it's going to culminate with a mock Saturnalia celebration. Then I give them their English notes on Saturnalia. Then they do their Latin reading in the slides that my colleague had made about Saturn. And then they end with a Google form reading comprehension in which they select the groups at the end. All right, so this is like a little selection of what the Agitenunk is that they fill out that I print. Sometimes I also include questions about kind of social classes and things like that to kind of start the conversation about relaxing slash inverting social norms. I'll show you also, this is what the notes look like. It's just a bunch of information about what was Saturnalia, how the Romans celebrated Saturnalia, and that kind of thing. Um, this is, oh no, I'll show that later. This is the Google form reading comprehension. So it's just like, you know, questions about some of the Latin words. What happened to Saturn's siblings? What's a scythe? What was Saturn afraid of? How does the myth end? Stuff like that. And then at the end, they can pick their top two choices for what groups they want to be in to prepare for the celebration. Usually they miraculously end up dividing themselves pretty evenly, but I still ask for two choices just in case I have to even it out a little bit. All right, so I'm going to close that because I already showed you, and I'm going to close that because I already showed you. All right. These are the papers that I hand out to each of the groups. So the decorations group, they get some, directions on how to come up with decorations. Games group, they get one. The relaxed social norms group, they get one. And this group usually needs a little bit of help. It's harder than I would have thought. So a lot of times I'll also give another kind of Google form at some point during the week for a do now where they have to brainstorm, for example, what are some of the rules in our school that students have to follow that limit their freedom so that they can't do what they want? What are some ways students show respect for their teachers at school? What are some ways that students act that it would be weird if teachers did it? What are some ways that teachers act? It'd be weird if students do it. If students and teachers were truly equal at school for one day, what would that look like? That kind of thing. And so I can kind of give this information, crowdsource this information and give it to the relaxed social norms group to help them out. And then the animal sacrifice. This group is large. You need like 8 people in this group, at least the way that I do it. There's only a couple speaking parts and an oinking part for the first victim, who we do not sacrifice because it is played by a student. Um, yeah, so these are all the different things, and then we've got the musicians who play the kazoo. But it's usually, there's like one or two outgoing kids who will do the speaking parts slash oinking parts, and then everybody else is just kind of there to do the sacrificing, and things like that. All right. So these are or this is the document for the Sigillaria that I was talking about. It's just, I print them out, I cut them in half, so each sheet has two cards. And then what I do is I write each student's name on each card. And then I hand them out randomly. And so they have to decorate one for the student that they're assigned to do. And then I have a bunch of blanks. And so then they can decorate them for whoever they want in addition to the one that they were assigned to do. So that way, everybody definitely gets at least one. And I also let them do it for other students and teachers in the school. Which they do. I just slide it into the teachers' mailboxes if they make them for them. So it's a good little booster for Latin to do that. All right, so um, days 2 to 3, depending on how many there are. Um, they get the additional reading about the Cronia Festival. They make the Sigillaria, and then they prepare for the celebration, right? So they're brainstorming relaxed social norms, games. They're putting together decorations. A lot of times, these group end up these groups end up merging into one by the end of the week and kind of helping the decorations group because it turns into kind of an ordeal. They need a lot of time and a lot of hands, and the more people they have working on the decorations, the better they come out and the better the classroom looks. And then the animal sacrifice group is usually just rehearsing the sacrifice for the entire week because it's a pretty long script. And we need to get everything perfect because, as you know, if you mess up anything during a sacrifice or during, any rites or rituals, you have to start over from the beginning. So they have to nail it. And it's kind of fun because we rehearse it in the hallway so that the rest of the students can't see it. So it's kind of a surprise for them. And then again, another little booster for Latin. People walk by and they're interested, and we get to talk to them about Saturnalia and stuff like that. All right. Finally, day 4 is the celebration. So we start off with the Agitenunk, the do now, which is the Google form reflection. And the reason why we start with this is because number one, they need to have some kind of thing to do when they're walking in the classroom to calm them down, center them. And also because once we get into doing the celebration, I'm not going to stop them and make them fill out a form. So we get this done at the beginning. Then we have about like 10 to 15 minutes to prep everything and get it all ready. So, the students hand out the Sigillaria, they put it on their desks, they put the finishing touches on the decorations. Usually there's something that's like way too heavy that keeps them falling off the wall. So we have like panicked taping that happens. And then the sacrifice group gets in their costumes. Maybe they rehearse one more time, they get all lined up, we get everything set up, get the altar set up, all of that stuff. Then once everything's prepped, everyone's ready. Oh, we hand out the pillei and people can put those on. Then we do the animal sacrifice, which usually takes, it's a pretty long script, like I said. I feel like I can't show you the video, unfortunately, because I can't, nor do I want to exploit my students. I feel like it was a solid 10 minutes when we did it last year. And I'll explain why in just a second. And then after the animal sacrifice, it's like, woo, the whole thing starts. And we begin with the relaxed social norms. So I introduce what the group came up with, and then we start playing games. And that's usually for about, I don't know, like I think we usually get a good half an hour of game playing in there. And then we clean up. And I have a specific slide in my slide deck for the cleanup to make sure that it happens. We put all of the all the whole classroom gets all screwed up and the desks get moved and everything. So we got to clean all that stuff up, clean up the animal sacrifice, put all the costumes away, do all of that stuff. Because I don't know about you, I didn't mention this in my context, but I share my classroom. Everybody at our school shares their classroom. So I can't like they can't leave and then I just during my prep I organize everything. No, I have to be ready for the 12th grade ELA class that comes in right afterwards when the bell rings. And then another class with a different teacher comes in after that. So it needs to be like it starts when it starts, it ends when it ends. All right. So the moment you've all been waiting for is a little more info on the animal sacrifice. So I tell the students all week that we're going to be sacrificing a pig because that's what the Romans did. And we're going to check the entrails for omens. And then we're going to eat the rest of the pig because that's what the Romans did. And they're in 10th grade, so I'm not like scarring them or anything, but they're like, what are we really doing? And I'm like, that's what we're really doing. You're gonna take the axe, you're gonna cut the pig, you're gonna pull out the stuff, we're gonna share it, and then we're gonna eat it together because it's a celebration. They feasted, remember? And they're like, okay. And they have doubts, but they're curious and they do not know. I don't tell them until that day, literally that day, the animal sacrifice group is the first group that finds out and they get so excited. Um, here's how it goes. The students process in and begin the sacrifice. So they're playing their kazoos, they process in. The main sacerdos says their part when the other sacerdos is whispering in their ear their lines actually. So that the main one doesn't have to hold any papers. They can just do it and the other person is whispering the lines to them. And then they bring up the first victim, which is an unwilling sacrifice, which is a student with like little piggy ears on. And so this student, they learn, right, from actually in one of my other videos, I talk about this amazing book, To Be a Roman. They learned from the chapter in here on religion that what they do is they explain to the animal what's going to happen to them. They touch them with the thing that they're going to, you know, sacrifice them with. And if the animal seems unwilling, then they have to stop and they have to get a new animal and they have to start everything all over again. So that's what happens. The student who's dressed up like the pig, like screams or cries or like whatever, and they're like, we got to start over. So then they process back out of the classroom. And they return to the hallway where they receive a pig piñata that's stuffed with candy and, of course, fake entrails. All right, so there's a pig piñata that I get every year online. It's like more expensive than I think it should be. It's like 25 bucks or something like that. But whatever, I only have to buy one a year, so I don't care. So I get a pig piñata. I fill it with candy so that we're able to distribute the food that's inside. And also, I don't want to have like lots of food in my classroom and like crumbs and that's just spills and like more things to clean up. So the candy is easier. There's just wrappers. They just throw it away. It's things that they can take a handful of and they can take it with them. So it's still kind of a celebration without being overboard. So I fill it with that. And I also have, I made some paper organs that I put inside. It's just made out of construction paper. This one's a liver, probably what a pig liver looks like. I don't know. And it's stuffed with it's just stuffed with scrap paper and then I stapled it together. So this is the liver. Um, these are the intestines. It's pink construction paper that I taped together. And so they have to pull that out. I also have a heart, which is similar to this, but red. And then there's one other organ that I couldn't find in my box. I think it was a gallbladder or maybe a stomach. I don't remember. But anyway, that's why I have the labeled plates so that because they've never seen it before and they don't know. So and I don't know what their anatomy knowledge is. Maybe better than mine. So they whack the piñata. They rip it out open. And then they pull out the different parts and put it on the plates, and they offer them up, and they sprinkle grape juice on them to consecrate them, and they sprinkle the mola salsa on top. Um, and that's what we do. And then we divide up the candy to the rest of the class, and everybody enjoys, and it's a feast. Um, and yeah, and then we complete the sacrifice and begin the celebration, and it's awesome. I honestly, I wish that I could show you pictures and videos from last year because they absolutely crushed it. Like the sacrifice group took it so seriously. They did amazing, and the kids were so psyched, and it really actually did feel like, yes, let's celebrate when they were done. It was fun. Um, and they were so excited about the piñata slash relieved when they finally saw what it was. And then the relaxed social norms that they came up with last year was that there's no seating arrangement because usually they have a seating arrangement. Our school has a uniform, so they said they can be out of uniform, which they can't be out of uniform, um, because they just can't. And I'm not even gonna bother to ask if they can be out of uniform. It's not worth it. So, I have like a box of dress up stuff, like like feather boas and like masks and like tiny hats and things like that, and like funky sunglasses that I just raided, a party store or like a Spirit Halloween or whatever. So I just bought a bunch of those things I mean, I had them. I had them for various reasons. So, Lays, stuff like that. So they can put that on, so they're out of uniform. And it kind of gives like a party vibe. Um, and then, so they last year came up with this rule that students can ask me to do things rather than me asking them to do things. So I'm always asking like can somebody hand out these papers? Can somebody collect the markers? Can somebody da, 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 da. So instead of me asking them to do stuff, they ask me. And then sometimes I'm one of those teachers that has like candy on hand usually, so I'll have like Jolly Ranchers or something like that. And I'll give them to them if they do some things sometimes that I ask them to do if they're really nice. And so because they all had candy on their plates from the piñata, whenever they asked me to do something and I did it, they gave me candy, which was really cute. Um, it was very cute. Okay, and so this is just one picture of some of the decorations that they came up with last year, which were really awesome. Really, really cool. This is just one wall in my classroom. I didn't want to take a picture of the whole thing, but they had like all kinds of like garlands were just like paper chains that were hung up around the classroom, which was really cool. Um, this is one of the sigillaria that one of my students made for me, or two of them. And they like made this was my actual outfit that I was wearing on that day. So she drew it to look like me, which is really cute. And so that's it. That's how I do Saturnalia in my class. Um, yeah. So I hope that there's something in there that you can take for your own class, or maybe it kind of got your creative juices flowing and you can think about how to adapt those things for your own classroom setting. I'm going to try to put whatever original materials I have on Teachers Pay Teachers, hopefully for free if I can do that. So if you want to download them, you can. And then, in the future, if I end up coming up with more original materials that I'm sure are completely original, I'll put those up and make them available as well. But I'd love to hear what kinds of things you do in your classroom. I always want to change and make things better. So, and I love hearing about other Latin teachers' ideas. So, if there's anything that you do that's super awesome to celebrate Saturnalia, please put it in the comments. And yeah, thank you for watching. Wale.